So good afternoon, everybody. We are here on a matter that I think is probably the most closely held secret in city government. Mike, don't interrupt me in this. You'll have time to talk. Just telling you right out front. We are here to talk about the golf course, and this is a terrific project, and I think probably now that it's out of the bag, as it were, I want to talk a little bit about what led us to this point. So, in our economic development efforts in the city, we've been fixed on the city's assets, leveraging the city's assets, because the city in many ways is itself an enterprise. And like business people will tell you, you got to make your assets work for you. New Bedford has a lot of cards to play. But one of the problems, one of our big constraints has been over the years that we are geographically constrained. We are some 24 square miles, and about a quarter of our 24 square miles is comprised of wetland, most of it in the Acushnet Cedar Swamp. So we can't do what a lot of other places have done to grow their tax base, as we must, to relieve our taxpayers, and to grow jobs, simply by opening up new places for development. There are towns that do that, in particular cities that tend to be constrained geographically because they're all built out. And in the case of New Bedford, we're really geographically constrained. So we've been thinking creatively about how we address that directly. And so we started to look at the golf course some 3 years ago, all the way back in 2014. I can remember the conversation that I had with Matt Morrissey, who was the economic development director at the time, and asked him, is there any reason why folks haven't looked at the development of the golf course? And because it sort of begged the question, right? So that is a place, for those of you who are not familiar with it, sits right on Hathaway Road. It is at the intersection of two major highways. It is connected by a freight rail line to the nation's freight rail system. It's right next to an airport. It is not in a neighborhood. The space is bounded by highways and by swampland and other things that create a buffer to any residential areas. So it is a place that one would tend to look for new industrial space, given also the decline in golf as a sport over the years and the declining attendance, especially of New Bedford residents at that golf course. We had to take a close look at it. So we talked more to economic development about it, and then in 2014, in early 2015, we got a call from Foxwoods, and this was the time when there was interest in a casino here in southeastern Massachusetts, and so the focus started to drift in that direction. After a few months, things started to wane off with the idea of a casino for lots of reasons, in particular because there really wasn't a market here that would sustain the kind of investment, the level of investment required under Massachusetts law. So once the dust cleared on that, we returned to the idea of developing the site for industrial space. And so we partnered with our friends at Mass Development. Marty Jones, the executive director, is here today, and she'll come up and talk in a second. But we have a terrific working relationship with the folks at Mass Development. They bring to projects a level of expertise and professionalism, know-how, and capital that can really activate sites to do the things that we want to do, which is to grow jobs, to give people in our city the opportunity to put a roof over their house, to put food on the table, and to send their kids to college and otherwise live the American dream. That's the kind of investments that we want to see in the city, and to grow our tax base, because taxpayers in the city are too constrained right now. There is, because of, frankly, a lot of state policies that make it difficult for us to balance our books. We need to look at growing our tax base. So, and we know also that the days are gone when we can just put another factory in an old mill. That doesn't work for modern manufacturing these days. So we have to look at greenfield sites. So we dug in earnest last year. So over the course of the year, we took a look at traffic studies about park protections under state law, which gets complicated, but by and large, we determined that that is not an issue for this site. We've looked at whether there's contamination and other environmental concerns, and we've come to the conclusion that there is a way to develop the golf course that will support what we believe will be upwards of 1,000 jobs, that will generate another $2 million at least in new revenue to the city, that will preserve at least 9 holes of the existing golf course, that won't disturb any neighborhoods, and that will be otherwise a great boon to the city's economy. And so we're here today to announce the entering into of an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding between the city and Mass Development, in which Mass Development will continue its work on the site. We believe we're at a point now to say that we're pretty confident that this is a viable industrial site. There are a number of things that are yet to be answered, and we will answer those questions in the weeks and the months ahead, but we think we've got something here that will really work. And so under the terms of the agreement, the city would convey the land, about a little over 100 acres, to Mass Development for the development of the city's second industrial park. And we believe that there are roughly 6 sites, as I said, that will support over 1,000 jobs and including a restaurant, including the continuation of golfing at the site. That will be there for generations, and so we're really excited about it. Mass Development, once it has the property, will go ahead and front some of the funds for planning as well as infrastructure work. We'll look to certain grants to supplant some of that funding, and there are grant opportunities available through things like the MassWorks program and other things, the site readiness program at the state level, and to kick this thing off. So how will it happen? So over the course of the next few months, we will continue to dig into the site, literally and figuratively, to make sure that we're 100% sure that it is suitable for industrial development. We believe it is. And along the way, we've had great discussions with our state delegation, especially Chris Markey, whose district it is in, as well as Senator Mark Montigny, Representative Tony Cabral, all of whom have been very supportive of the project, as well as with the City Council. City Council President Joe Lopes couldn't be here today, and Hugh Dunn and Jim Oliveira will be speaking in a moment, but the City Council has been on board with this as well. So we feel very strongly that we've got a really great concept that in the months ahead will require everybody to jump in. The city will continue to work on the site with Mass Development. There will be a discussion about rezoning and about creating a district improvement financing district, a DIF district that will help, that will promote reinvestment into the site. And overall, and I'll show you what it looks like. It's a site whose contours will be roughly shaped like so. So here's 195 at the bottom, so if we can just orient you to the map. So here's 195 along the bottom right here, and of course the intersection of Route 140. Here's Hathaway Road. The airport's over here. City landfills here, and then this is all woodland. The rail line goes through here, and here's the golf course. And this shaded area more or less will be what we're talking about. Those contours will likely change over time, and they're not set in stone, but that's kind of where it is right now. And the idea would be that you'd have the entrance to the park more or less where the entrance to the golf course is now, and that there will be a reconstructed, approved clubhouse for the golf course itself that will include restaurant space as well. You will see along here, this is really prime real estate along the highway that could be put to a number of uses. It is a really thoughtful concept that folks in city government and Mass Development have been working on in earnest for the better part of the last 9 months or so. There are lots of people to thank. Let me start with the team over at Economic Development, the EDC. Derek Santos in particular has run point on this project from the get-go. has done a fabulous job working through a lot of the planning details and interacting with mass development and making sure and understanding how it fits into the rest of the city. And Derek has just excelled at the problem-solving dimension of doing this project, as well as, of course, the leadership at Economic Development, Tony Sapienza, the chairman, you'll hear from in a second, Joe Nalman, a board member, both of whom have done tremendous work, Liz Isherwood, Helena Hughes, all of whom have done tremendous work in supporting these kinds of asset-based plays for the city. There is complete buy-in, complete consensus across city government that we need to make the most of the cards that we've been dealt, and that's what we're doing. I want to thank also the city team, Pat Sullivan, Kenny Blanchard, Neil Mello, in particular, Ari Sky in particular, Michaela McDermott, who sorted through a lot of the really thorny legal issues that we've had to take on in this project. And I want to thank the folks at Mass Development. I want to thank Marty Jones in particular, who saw the potential at this site, for this concept, and who really put her wheel to the millstone, shoulder to the millstone to really make this happen. And we've had such a fabulous working relationship with you, Marty, and your team, Ed Starzik, Richard Henderson, and everybody in Mass Development. That we're just this is something that we're really excited about. We couldn't do this without your assistance, and we'll hear from Marty in a second. I want to thank the state delegation, as I mentioned again. Mark Montigny and Chris Markey have been very supportive. Paul Schmidt is here in support as well, has been a big supporter of these kinds of development plays. Tony Cabral as well. Everybody's been on board with this, and we really appreciate the consensus that has been built around it. So there's still a lot of work ahead, and this is a complex project. But I believe it is in the city's long-term interest that we do this. And what's great about it is that it is not only an opportunity to take advantage of the demand for so-called greenfield industrial space that's open, uncontaminated, next to major infrastructure assets, and over which there is public site control. It is probably the most marketable greenfield site in the Northeast, or at least one of the most, and so we've got to take full advantage of that. So I want to say there's a lot of work ahead, but this is a city that is not sitting back. This is a city that's making things happen, and this is a great example of that. So I want to thank all of you for listening in, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. Let's hold on the questions for the moment, and I want to call up Marty Jones, the CEO of Mass Development, and somebody who, again, has done tremendous work in helping move this project along. Marty. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here today for this exciting announcement about a great opportunity here in the city of New Bedford. And Mayor, I want to thank you for your warm welcome, and the legislative delegation, Rep. Markey, Rep. Schmidt here today, and the entire delegation. That's been a big help as we've grappled with how to approach this project and move it forward. And also the City Council, an important part of the process, and the Economic Development team here in New Bedford. Mass Development's done a lot of work here in the city over the time I've been at Mass Development. It's a team effort, and this partnership, I think, being in place is one of the reasons why this new project is going to be so successful. I hope that all of you know that Mass Development is the state's quasi-public economic development and finance authority. In that role, we work with businesses, nonprofits, banks, and communities all around the Commonwealth to stimulate business, drive economic growth, and help communities thrive. Part of our mission is to redevelop complex and challenging sites like Devens, the former Fort Devens in Central Mass, Village Hill, Northampton, the former Northampton State Hospital in Northampton, and to put these sites back into productive use and economic generators for the cities that they're in. Partnering with the City of New Bedford on this project aligns perfectly with that mission, and we are really happy to be able to be a part of the team to redevelop the Whaling City Golf Course into an industrial commercial park for the city. Yesterday, I was in Taunton for the grand opening of Martinetti's new headquarters at the Miles Standish Industrial Park. Mass Development's work on that project, on other large-scale industrial parks, throughout the Commonwealth have demonstrated that there is a lack of sites available for companies who want to grow and expand in the Commonwealth. And there's a need for more of these large, easily accessible, development-ready sites around the state. To fill that need, the Commonwealth last year created a new program, the Site Readiness Program. The project is based at Mass Development and aims to boost the Commonwealth's inventory of large, well-located, shovel-ready sites, to accelerate private investment in industrial and commercial projects and support the conversion of abandoned or underutilized sites into clean, tax-generating properties. I'm excited to announce today that to help prepare the Whaling City Golf Course for redevelopment, Mass Development has awarded the City of New Bedford a $300,000 site readiness grant in the first year of this program. I do want to also specifically thank the Baker-Polito administration for its leadership and support of the economic development work that we do at Mass Development, and for its foresight in creating the site readiness program in particular. With these new grants, the agency will be able to work with communities around the Commonwealth to create revenue and jobs. In New Bedford, the site readiness funds will allow the city and Mass Development to engage a planning and engineering team to conduct environmental, geotechnical site investigations, review the needs for local and state permits, and to look at the best reconfiguration of the remaining 9 holes of the golf course. These funds will help the city prepare the site for lasting economic growth and vitality. Lastly, I do want to thank my Mass Development team who have already worked so hard on this, Richard Henderson, Ed Starzyk, and Alan Delaney. You'll be seeing more of them as they are here working with the city to take this exciting project to the next level. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marty. So this project has benefited from the really unwavering support of our state delegation. And I remember over a year ago calling both Chris Markey and Mark Montigny to talk about the project, and both of them voiced their support for it, which I greatly appreciate. They both of them have been huge supporters of things like the site readiness program and MassWorks and other things that are growing jobs in New Bedford, and this is just another example of the kind of support that they're providing that is strengthening our economy and our ability to compete. So I wanted to ask Chris to come on up and say a few words. Mark Montigny couldn't be here because of a commitment to a budget hearing today that he couldn't get out of. That's the Senate is up to these days, but I want Chris to come on up and offer a few words. Chris.
Actually, that phone call was bittersweet to some degree. I spent many a days playing golf at that golf course when I was a teenager, and it was a great opportunity for me to be able to play golf in an open field in New Bedford, growing up in New Bedford, and having those opportunities. And I know it means a lot to a lot of people. But reality has to set in too, and that's one of the things that when you look at the way in which our economy is growing and the needs for what we hope New Bedford will become, this is the really, truly only viable option that the city has when you look at our land, what's available for land for this type of tax base increase. And let me tell you, New Bedford needs to increase its tax base. It has to. It cannot survive without that. It will never survive without that. And the opportunity that this avails the city and the people of New Bedford is incredible. And while it is a bittersweet time, for me at least, because of my memories of that place, and I'm certain there are many other people who have great memories of being able to play golf at a cheap rate in the city of New Bedford, you look around and you say, okay, what's the economy of the golf industry? And when you look at it and you see Hawthorne Country Club closing down in Dartmouth, you see the other golf courses struggling, the public course in Acushnet struggling, you need to make sure that you take every opportunity, as the mayor said, and take advantage of every asset that you have. This is a long-term investment for the city, for the Commonwealth. I think it makes sense. And again, I do it with a heavy heart when I look at this, because emotionally, I want the golf course to stay forever and have my kids and my grandchildren play there. But the reality is we need to grow the tax base in New Bedford, and this is the perfect opportunity for it. Mass development is the perfect quasi-state agency to give us that leverage to be able to do that. So I think when we look at it in a very objective way and we look at it without our hearts involved, this is the right thing to do, absolutely. And hopefully our children may have jobs there and our grandchildren may have jobs there, and they can live in New Bedford and value education and increase our school department and make our schools better. Because in the end, that's what we ultimately want. Perpetuate this great city and make sure it continues to grow. So thank you very much for having me, Mr. Mayor. Great idea. I hope it succeeds, and I hope we all can support this, even though I know it hurts some. Thanks.
All right, you know, it's getting hot in here. I think I went on too long. It was winter like 4 days ago. So next is, I want to ask Tony Sapienza to come on up and say a few words. Tony, as was reported in the paper earlier this week, is going to receive the Standard Times' Irwin Jacobs Leadership Award, and that's, as for those of you who didn't read the article, it's for a very good reason. And Tony's been at the tip of the spear on all things economic development in the city, and been one of the primary mandarins of leading economic development for the entire region, really, and has just been a huge supporter of the asset-based economic development strategy that we've been implementing over the last few years. So, Tony, thanks again for making it happen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for being here today. For those of you who don't realize it, the New Bedford Economic Development Council is the primary economic development agency in the city, okay? And we are chaired by a board of 9 members, and we have a large council membership of over 250 people who routinely participate in the discussions that we have of how to grow jobs in New Bedford. That's our job as a council, okay, to help this administration, previous administrations, administrations to come, to find the best ways to grow jobs. There are a number of us who are private sector people who have a direct impact on jobs because we hire and we fire. And there are others who say, wait a minute, how do we use the assets of the city appropriately? And this is one example where we were able to come together and develop a partnership with Mass Development and with the city, and to talk about ways to grow the opportunities. As the mayor said, old mill buildings do not meet the needs of manufacturing facilities and commercial growth that is necessary in this city. We have to increase the tax base. We have to be able to fund our school system so that we can train the workers that are going to be there for the jobs of the future. We were just with the new chancellor from UMass Dartmouth, who was saying that 50% of the jobs that are going to exist 10 years from now, we don't even know what those jobs are. That's how fast technology is changing our economy. So we need to be able to prepare, and education is a key part, and our tax base is really important to grow. We suffered during the recession from a tax base point of view. This is a unique opportunity to increase our tax base, increase the interest, the monies coming into state government, so we don't have to raise taxes on our homeowners, particularly who bear the brunt of those tax increases. So how did this thing happen? It happened because of strong partnerships. Mass Development is a key player statewide, and the staff at the EDC, led by Derek Santos, as the mayor said, has developed a unique relationship with Marty and her team. Okay, Pat Sullivan's been a part of that, as well as others here in city government, so that we've been able to build this partnership. And it takes that kind of a partnership to get things done. It all starts with good planning. Okay, and we've had good planning going back 10 or 12 years, whether it was around the possibility of a casino, around other uses of this land, okay, that would be so valuable. And to have this kind of an asset with highway, rail, and access is really important to those of us in the business community who look at how we're going to make our companies, more efficient and more productive. So the planning piece has been very, very important. And then finally, the soft amenities are important in terms of quality of life. We're going to retain 9 holes of golf, okay? And we're going to do it better than it's been done in the past. And that's really important, okay? Because we're still going to be able to train our grandkids how to play golf at Whaling City on a course that will be, rejuvenated, brought back to life, and brought to a new level of professionalism. And that's just really, really important for the future as well. So I'm really pleased about this project, support the mayor, and want to thank the mayor and the delegation, and certainly Marty and her team, because they've just done an excellent job in partnering with the EDC to make this happen. Thank you.
So another really key partner has been the New Bedford City Council. The City Council has been briefed on this matter and has been kept in the loop along the way. And the City Council knows as well as anybody both the need for more jobs in our city and the need to expand our tax base. I mean, we're in the middle of budget season right now, and it's squarely in front of us. How do we continue to provide the services that our residents deserve and expect, and pay for them? And so expanding our tax base is key to all that, and that's why this project is so important. So City Council President Joe Lopes, who's a big supporter of this idea, couldn't be here today. His work required him to be in Boston, but two city councilors are here, and I want to have them both come on up. The first is Jim Oliveira, who's the executive director, who wears two hats. He's not only the Ward 1 city council, but he's also the executive director of the Workforce Investment Board here in the city. And Jim knows as well as anybody that in order to have an effective job training program anywhere, here in New Bedford or anywhere else, you need to have jobs available on the other end to train people for. And so I just want to thank Jim for all of his efforts in supporting job creation in the city, and ask him to come on up and say a few words.
First of all, I'm an old economic development director as well, and when you begin to evaluate your resources in this community, you always have to take a look at those resources and look at them from the perspective of what's the highest and best possible use for a particular site. And believe me when I tell you, as a son of a golfer over at the Whale for many years, I know that my dad would probably be a little bit remiss if he was still around, but I think he'd ask me, what do you think, Jim? And I think I would be able to respond to him, Dad, times have changed. Your tax bills are going up. Your mortgage your tax bill is going to be almost as much as your mortgage. We need to find new sources of income to offset the tax requirements for the city of New Bedford, or we're going to lose services. So it's very important to recognize that, and it's been a balance for us, at least for me, over the past 5 years, 5.5 years, the balance of the challenge of how do you manage your city with the limited revenues that we have. From a workforce point of view, this is great news. 2,000 manufacturing jobs, or a combination of manufacturing, back office, distribution, whatever those jobs may be. There are job seekers in this community, as many people very well know. The unemployment rate is still above the state average. It requires a great deal of training, and what we've done through the Workforce Investment Board over the last couple of years have begun to develop aggressive pipeline training programs for manufacturing, for healthcare, and we'll continue to do that and modify our efforts as we understand the types of businesses that may in fact locate in this particular business park. I agree wholeheartedly about the fact that you need one-floor factories nowadays that take up acres of land, and the type of work that's accomplished in manufacturing today is what we call advanced manufacturing. Not where I worked at Cornell Dubilier 45 years ago. It's more like a very clean environment, and people make pretty darn good money. That's what we want for our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Last is, this site is in Ward 3, and our new Ward 3 councilor is none other than Hugh Dunn, who's day job is in the business of economic development over at the South Coast Development Partnership. So in a sense, he too wears two hats here. It's both an economic development hat, but also the hat of a city council who represents a district where more jobs are needed. And so I want to ask Hugh to come on up and say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's really a great day when you're recently elected and get to join in the announcement of 1,000+ jobs in your ward. But I really have to give credit where credit is due. I'd like to give kudos to the mayor. I'd like to thank Mass Development. I'd like to thank our state legislature and my city council colleagues, including Henry Bousquet, my predecessor, as well as the EDC for their work on this. I really think that this is the best of both worlds, this project. The thousands of jobs will help diversify and expand the tax base, but will also preserve affordable access to golf with the 9 holes that will remain on the course. So I think it will really help push the city forward and allow golfing to remain accessible. Looking forward, I plan to work with the administration, with Mass Development, and with my colleagues to ensure that this project moves forward in a way that does not impede the quality of life of the residents of Ward 3 and that surrounding area. That is done in a manner that's environmentally responsible and a manner that provides economic opportunity to the residents of my ward. Thank you.
I want to acknowledge my good friend Dave Slutzen, a board member from the Economic Development Council, who's a big supporter of this and so many other important projects in the city. And with all that, I'm ready. I said Liz, who else is back? I said Helena. You got to pay attention to my words. All right, Liz Isherwood wants another shout out. She gets 2 today, but she deserves it. And of course, Helena, who's way back there. Hello, Helena. Yeah, we've got great support from the EDC board, and it really makes a difference in all projects, but especially for this one. All right, with all that, let me take some questions. I bet some people have a few.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Greg.
it seems like it's a done deal. The support to get the home rule petition through the city council and the state legislature to get this approved for commercial use.
Well, it's not a done deal. As I said at the outset, there's still a number of questions that have to be sorted through, not the least of which is soil conditions and the contour of the map, what actually works, what might not work. I mean, we haven't gotten down, the city and Mass Development haven't gotten, and their consultants haven't gotten down to that level of detail to say definitively, this is what's going to happen with the contours of the site. This is what's going to happen with the Article 97 issue. Article 97 is the section of the state constitution that protects parkland. It's unclear, and I'll just say a word about that. Some of the entire site is protected parkland. Some isn't. The part that we're building on is not protected parkland. There may be a couple of little components that have to be dealt with, but we don't think that it's protected. Lawyers have looked at it, Mass Development's lawyers have looked at it, Foxwood's lawyers looked at it back in the day, and they all have come to the same conclusion, which is it's very unlikely that that's protected parkland, the part that's shaded. So all said, there's still lots of questions that have to be worked through, and so nothing's a done deal, but we're at a point now, we're making this announcement now because we've done a lot of work on this. An awful lot of people have done an awful lot of work on this, and we can say with some confidence at this point that this is what we have here is something that we think we should go forward with.
So under from your guess, you won't have to deal with the necessary state legislature to approve to build on that land. It's kind of good to go as it is now under Article 9, or not under Article 97, to clarify.
So in general, so this is the original golf course.
Right.
What will be left is the golf course that was built in the 1920s, and that was the part that was added. Okay. Right. And there is, and in general, this part is not subject to Article 97 protection.
When do you, and I guess the next step, when do you envision the next step the next domino to fall in terms of maybe groundbreaking or anything like that?
There's a lot of work to be done. I mean, there's a lot of engineering that has to be done. There's zoning issues. There are district financing issues that will all have to get worked with. There won't be any construction on this site until at the earliest 2019.
Is there a cost associated to any of it?
Not to the city. So in general, the way it works is that the parcels, this parcel would be conveyed to mass development. And mass development would front a number of the design costs, some of the infrastructure costs, other of the infrastructure costs would be funded by grants, like the MassWorks program. You just heard about the site readiness program. To get it all off the ground, and then when they're sold, when the individual properties are sold off to the private sector, the proceeds will pay off those costs, and then at the end of the day, there will be a split between the city and mass development, 60% city, 40% mass development.
How do you envision the 6 sites being used? Are there any specific ideas yet, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, it runs the gamut. I mean, you've heard a couple of references to advanced manufacturing, so that's one possibility. You know, you have down here, you've got the rail line right here, so that's a good place for certain distribution activities as well. Some of it could be back office work, especially, you know, those parcels that run along 195. But, you know, so it's got to be flexible enough to accommodate different uses so that we can market it effectively.
What holes are you taking?
So you know the course better than anybody, Mike. No, down, Mike.
What holes are you taking?
It's a concept.
1, 2, and 3.
So it's this side. So one goes that way, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, the driving range, the
Yeah.
clubhouse,
Right,
and the parking lots.
right.
The 10 pole,
Yeah, which one's 10? Is that down that way?
that's part of it, that's part of the Donald Ross design. The 10 pole, you're taking the 18 pole, you'd be taking the 18 pole, and you'd probably be taking 17 and 6.
Just read that white note on the side of the,
So.
Hold on, Mike.
on the left side.
Oh, you don't want me to point them out.
It doesn't say which holes.
No, but
Doesn't say.
I'm looking at that map and I can tell you what holes that you've got, that you're taking. So my question to you is, if you're taking the clubhouse, where's the driving range gonna go over here? We're not gonna have.
So that's left to be determined, Mike. So you've got, well, hold on, Mike. So you'll end up having more than 9 holes left. So what's not shaded is more than 9 holes. And so you could do a driving range on that side. You'll do it, you will have, hold on, Mike. Mike, play by certain, Mike, yeah.
I'm listening.
So there will be a clubhouse, which will be better than the one that exists. You're familiar with the one that exists. It's not exactly the finest clubhouse, right? We've had problems with it. We've spent a lot of money replacing the roof. It's leaked, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So we won't be doing that anymore, Mike. So we'll actually have something that looks good and it serves everybody.
Are you gonna build a 3,700 square foot clubhouse?
That's all to be determined, Mike. It's not, you know, what we got here is a general concept.
Yeah, I understand that.
I can't tell you what vodka they're gonna serve in the clubhouse. We're not down at that level of detail.
I'm gonna build a state-of-the-art clubhouse.
Yeah, and it could be done by the private sector as well, in which case, we actually might get some tax dollars and more jobs out of it. And it might actually be a
No,
better thing.
I
Yeah.
agree with you on that, on getting new revenue. I'm just not sure.
I'll tell you what, Mike, because you know that course as well as anybody. Here's what we do. When we start sitting down for planning, you sit down with us and you tell everybody, download your.
I'm wondering if you're gonna build a new clubhouse of
Yeah.
3,700 square feet.
There will be a new clubhouse. There'll be a new clubhouse. And by the way, because, you know, high school golf teams play golf here, they play 9-hole matches. They can still do that.
What are the status that we have now?
What's that mean?
What are the status that we have with the lease at this moment? The application?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the city signed an operating agreement, back in like 2000, 2001, roughly, a 35-year agreement that was under, frankly, very bad terms for the city, right? It didn't pay the city that much money. It kept the city on the hook for the big capital costs. So like we were just talking about the roof of the clubhouse, we had to pay for that. out of our own pocket. So we have, and to buy ourselves out of the lease would have cost us a lot of money, about $2 million just to get out of the lease. So we had a pending lawsuit with Johnson Golf that we settled, and the settlement provides, among other things, for a much lower buyout. So if we did a buyout right now, it'd be $125,000. After August, it'll be $25,000, which is an awful lot more affordable, and that's what frankly makes this whole thing work. Otherwise, there's 15 years left on that agreement, and we wouldn't be talking about this until 2030 or so.
Will be run by the city, or are you going to send it out for bids?
We'll have a golf consultant take a look at those questions, so it could end up back in the city's responsibility, Mary Raposa, our Director of Parks and Recreation, or we put it back out to another vendor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a certain way you calculated the 1,000 jobs without knowing exactly what's going on in zero?
Yeah, there's a rough estimate. What is it? The one job?
It's based on square footage of potential use site.
Yeah. Yeah. There's sort of a standard formula for that, just based on the size of the buildings. Yeah.
You don't know what is coming there. How can you promise 2,000 jobs?
Well, that's what it would be at full build-out. We've seen the full build-out of our.
What the buildup is going to be.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a warehouse, is it going to be manufacturing, you just don't know.
So 1,000 jobs is a very conservative estimate. So if you look at our industrial park, we have almost, what do we have in the industrial park now? 4,000, 5,000?
It fluctuates right now, it's around 3,500.
Yeah, so we have a sense of what the build-out, we have a sense of what the market looks like. As Marty Jones, hold on a second. So as Marty Jones just mentioned, there is tremendous demand for greenfield development in the state, and there aren't too many greenfields. What's different about this one, probably from any in the state, you tell me if I'm wrong on this, Marty, is that a lot of the greenfields in the state, a lot of them are near highways, but what's different here is that this isn't a city, which means that there's all the underground utilities are in place, water and sewer. So it's not like, if you look at the town of Freetown, for instance, which has done some greenfield development, they don't have water and sewer capacity that reaches their remote sites, and so it constrains development. This here is all hooked up. It's all hooked up. It is about as suitable for industrial development as anything in this state.
Since you bring up the industrial park, why don't you develop that more thoroughly? I mean, there's a lot of space out there. I live in Ward 1. I drive out there all the time.
Yeah. So there is one available.
From the power plant to
Yeah.
the woods north, there's a lot of woods. In the back, there's a lot of area
Right.
down.
Not upland.
Barnett-
It's
There's a
wetland.
lot of.
It's wetland.
Well,
It's wetland. There's one
a lot of
available,
wetland over there.
not what's shaded. That's all upland. There's one available site left in our industrial park. That's why we're having this conversation. There's one site left that has a significant amount of market interest. People want that site. So we're at full build out of our industrial park. There's no place left. New Bedford's small. It's not like we can just say, we're going to just start opening up farmland in the city. We don't have it.
Who do you have in the Polaroid building out there? No.
Is that?
Polaroid campus right now is NWD Trucking.
Yeah.
And Parallel Products.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
Eversource.
Yeah,
So we have
Eversource,
one
yeah.
company of 3 at the Polaroid site right now.
Yeah, no, the EDC spent an awful lot of time figuring this stuff out, and yeah, we wish we had more land. We don't. All right, well, I'll take,
I'm gonna, I apologize.
I have another
I need
event
to
as-
go
as
to,
well.
so, if there are any questions for me before I have to go, I would
Yeah.
have to do that.
Quick question, New Bedford guy. Some viewers are asking, any preference for New Bedford residents for these jobs that are coming?
Yeah, so great question. So when we do, we can't put a hard and fast requirement in, but what we can do is, as part of a lot of the folks who will come in here looking to do development will seek tax increment financing, and the deal with that is that there'll have to be some sort of preference as much as the law allows for New Bedford resident hiring. Yeah. All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Sorry.